What if philosophy wasn't something abstract or academic, but a very practical art that could change the way we live our lives every day? The circus elephant. When I was a child, I really loved the circus. And more than anything, I really loved the animals. The animal that fascinated me the most was the elephant. During the show, the huge animal displayed its immense strength. It was such a powerful creature. But always after the performance, the elephant stood quiet and tied to a small stake that was stuck in the ground, and a chain held its feet captive. This stake was tiny and barely in the ground, and it seemed very strange to me. How could an animal that could put down trees not break free from such a small peg like that? And I wondered, what was holding it? Why doesn't it leave? When I was 5 or 6, I still believed in the wisdom of the adults. So I asked my father, I asked my teacher, my uncle, and their answer was always very, very simple. The elephant is tamed. And if it's tamed, why do they chain it then? I was asking again, and I never really got a satisfying answer. Years later, I finally learned the truth. The circus elephant did not leave because it was tied to that stake when it was very, very young. Back then, at that age, no matter how hard it tried, it didn't have the strength to break free. It pulled, it sweated, it struggled, but it just couldn't do it. And at some point, it would get tired, fall asleep, totally exhausted, and then the next day it would try again to do the same thing all over again. Until one day, it finally believed that it cannot do it. And from then on, it totally stopped trying and then totally forgot about it. So the powerful elephant that we see at the circus doesn't leave because it believes it cannot leave. The memory of not being able to leave has been ingrained into it. And it never questioned, since then, its situation. It never tried again to break loose. All of us, more or less, are just like the circus elephant. We wander the world tied to invisible stakes, convinced that we cannot do things simply because once upon a time, when we were young, we either tried and failed, or because someone somehow said, no, you cannot do this, it's not possible, and so on. And we carry this memory as if it were a law. I cannot do this, and I will never be able to. This was a story by Jorge Bucay, The Unexamined Life. And here comes the question, the crucial question that we should perhaps ask each other, and most importantly, ourselves. What is holding me captive? Which of the things that I do or think or I feel are truly mine, and which ones are implants? What has been passed on me from the way I was raised that keeps me stuck? Am I really free? Isn't this the very essence of dialectics? To sit down and have a real honest conversation with ourselves. To approach ourselves with questions. Why do you believe that? Where did this inside voice comes from? And who told you that you cannot do something? And this is a nice reminder from Socrates. An unexamined life is not worth living. If we don't face our own chains, we will remain forever trapped in a memory that's no longer true, and we will be living in a weird prison wonderland. If we start talking like this, if we start examining our wooden stakes, then maybe little by little we will discover that the stakes were smaller than what we thought. And perhaps we even have the strength to pull them out. Let's completely level the thing here and bring dialectics to the farmer's market. I've used this example before because it's actually funny. At the farmer's market, we don't buy vegetables blindly. We pick up the tomatoes, we look at them, and check if they are fresh or rotten. We don't just trust the seller who is trying to get rid of the rotten tomato. You look at the tomato and you ask, is this tomato worth buying? The funny thing is that in Greece, at the farmer's market, the farmers actually shout dialexte, which means choose. Choose, come and choose. Dialego in Greek is actually choosing. It is that simple. You are choosing by filtering out. So philosophy begins with choosing what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of. And dialectics, in philosophical terms, it means to choose through dialogue. A dialogue with another person or with your own self. But we don't do the same thing with our ideas. Instead, we swallow them whole, exactly as they were given to us. We never examine whether a belief is rotten, stale, or genetically modified. We don't compare it with other ideas to see if it holds up. We just accept it because that's what we were taught, because it was repeated to us enough times in school, and because that's what the majority does. Philosophy begins with choice, and dialectics is the art of choosing what deserves to stay in your soul. Dialectics help us to do to our ideas exactly what we do at the farmer's market. Examine them one by one to see if they have any value or if we should throw them away. We shouldn't accept the first opinion served to us but compare it, analyze it, and look for its composition. Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis is a very simple definition of dialectics. Dialectical thinking is a process that leads us to the truth of things and to the understanding of the whole world around us. To free yourself from all this programming, the programming that society, school, adults themselves, who were also tied to their own stakes, burdened us with, it is the greatest gift you can give to yourself. Facing your own contradictions, it is like entering the labyrinth. But inside the darkness, you might just find the real treasure, which is your true self. Eleftheria, which means freedom, is not just freedom to do whatever you want. It literally means the power to grow into your true self. As Frank Zappa puts it, if you end up with a boring, miserable life because you listened to your mom, your dad, your teacher, your priest, or some guy on the television telling you how to do your shit, then you deserve it. Because that's where freedom begins, when you stop swallowing the rotten tomatoes you were given and start examining them, one by one. Freedom is not about rebellion, but about conscious critical thought. It's about being your own gatekeeper and deciding what you allow to influence you. It is an active process. It is not a passive one. The Origins of Dialectics. If we use it correctly, dialectic can help us live more consciously and avoid contradictions. Contradictions both around us and within us. Antisthenes, Socrates' student, when asked what was the most necessary lesson in life was, he answered "τα κακά απομαθήν," which means to unlearn the bad stuff, to unlearn evil. Today, this doesn't just mean removing moral evils, but also removing all habits and perceptions that distance us from true well-being, from prosperity and correct thinking. Learning to distinguish the bad and the unnecessary from the good and the necessary is the very first step towards self-knowledge. And this distinction, however, It is not something that happens automatically. It requires conscious effort and practice, and to break any societal limitations or expectations or programming, you have to get rid of this. A typical question I hear is this: what did you study? Music, I say. And then why you talk about philosophy if you haven't studied it? And I say because I want to, because I read 10 books anytime, all the time, because I like to think, and because when I'm not reading, I'm lucky enough to often be able to wear headphones while I'm working, and then I'm listening to audiobooks and YouTube videos. And because I I also like opening ancient lexicons. But don't you think I have something to say? Besides, music is absolutely related to philosophy. It's what Plato says: philosophy is the greatest form of music. The basic principle of dialectics is to ask the right questions and seek the corresponding answers, and then take the whole process gradually all the way to the very beginning, the very first principle of something, and clearing all the fog along the way. Instead of uncritically consuming whatever is offered out there, we must analyze and separate the truth from the lies and deception. Clarity in our thinking, the search for the essence behind the phenomena, and the avoidance of confusion are essential for the development of dialectical thought. Heraclitus, with his concept of the harmony of opposites and logos, essentially speaks of dialectics, that the world is not static but constantly changing, and it is full of contradictions. He says war is the father of all things, and what he says, he's basically implying that the conflict of opposites is the very driving force of evolution. Dialectics help us to understand how these contradictions and conflicts are simply the way the universe moves and evolves. The universe operates on cause and effect, a process we can understand through dialectics. While at first glance it may seem that contradictions create chaos, in reality these contradictions are eventually reconciled, leading to greater harmony and order. How can someone start cultivating dialectics in their daily life? We need to ask questions. The first and most important way to begin dialectical thinking is to learn how to ask questions. When we face an idea, a theory, some news on the TV, or a problem, we should always ask, why is it this way? What is the cause of this phenomenon? What are the consequences of this thing? Questioning is the key to dialectical thinking. And then to analyze the contradictions. Life is full of contradictions, and we must observe them and analyze them. And when we see two opposing views or situations, instead of rejecting them, we should examine, and understand how they are connected or how they are disconnected. And then to recognize where the synthesis is. As Heraclitus said, contradictions lead to a new synthesis. This means that while contradictions exist, they lead to new perceptions and situations. We should never be discouraged by contradictions, but examine them and understand the deeper meaning and balance that can emerge from them, inside and outside. Our internal world as well as the external world. Because we actually live in two different worlds, the internal and the external. Then we need to practice self-criticism. Dialectical thinking requires a continuous self-criticism. It is very important to recognize our mistakes and prejudices and to be open to new information and ideas. And then we need to avoid ambiguity, clarity. It's a very fundamental thing to have, but it is non-existent today. When we discuss or think, we must avoid vague and general statements like most people do. Instead, we should be very specific and rely on logical arguments and not on assumptions or blind faith to things. The triple filter test. Talking about ambiguity and clarity, here's a story that is often told about Socrates. While it is not historically accurate 100%, it's not fully certain, it is a very valuable thing to know that we use here in Greece. One day, as Socrates was strolling through Athens, he met someone who told him that he had something very important to share that he had heard about one of his students. And Socrates told him that before he spoke, he wanted him to pass a test of triple filtration. And the guy asked, triple filtration? He was surprised. What is this? Socrates replied that, yes, before you tell me what you have heard about my student, I would like us to take a minute to filter what you are about to tell me. The first filter is that of truth. Are you absolutely sure that what you are about to tell me is true? The guy replies, well, not exactly, I just heard it. Socrates replies, I see. So you have no idea if what you want to tell me is true or false. Let's try the second filter, that of goodness. Is what you are about to tell me about my student something good? And the guy replies, good. No, quite the opposite actually. So Socrates continued, you want to say something bad about my student even though you are not at all sure if it is true. Then the guy looked at him in embarrassment. Nevertheless, Socrates continued, you can still pass the test because there is a third filter. The third filter is that of usefulness. Is what you want to tell me about my student something that could be useful to me in some sort of way? And the reply was, no, I don't think so. Socrates says, so then, since what you are about to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor useful, why should I listen to it? So the guy left in shame, having learned a very valuable lesson. But dialectical thinking is not just a tool for understanding the world, but also a way of life that helps in personal development and in understanding the harmony of the whole cosmos. And through this process, we can move away from all the evils and discover the truth behind the phenomena. The contradictions in our daily lives come from our own unconsciousness and our distance from this dialectical thinking. We don't learn to question, to challenge, to analyze. We have been made to believe that dialectics is something difficult, something boring, something very theoretical for academics, when in reality it is the most practical tool we have to live totally consciously. Examples of dialectical contradictions in everyday life. At work, you work in a call center, calling people to try to sell them loans without knowing if they are already deep in debt, if mentally they are not okay, or if the product you are promoting will harm them instead of helping them. You don't ever question the consequences of your action. You just follow the instructions and say, I'm just doing my job. As a police officer, you go down to a demonstration. You are ordered to throw tear gas at pensioners who are demanding a better life. You know that these people are your parents, your grandparents, and that their cause is obviously righteous. But you follow orders without questioning whether you are truly serving social order or if you are just becoming a tool of repression. And what do you say? I'm just doing my job. As a journalist, you are given pre-written press releases to reproduce. You don't research. You don't question the truth of what you are saying. You become essentially a mouthpiece and you misinform the world, even if you once entered this profession to actually serve the truth. And what do you say? I'm just doing my job. In a company, you work for a company that asks you to present a product as something amazing and very high quality, even though you know it is a piece of junk. And you convince yourself that that's how the market is and continue to sell lies to people. And what do you say? I'm just doing my job. As a politician, you make pre-election promises of justice, progress, and change. But when it's time to act, you give in to various pressures, you serve special interests, and forget the values you supposedly proclaimed. And you don't realize that you have become part of the very system you once denounced. What are you doing? You're just doing your job. As a doctor, you study to be a doctor because you want to help people. But as soon as you enter the job market, you are forced to act like a business person, promote pharmaceuticals, take bribes, and see patients as customers. Because, what do you say again? That's how the job is. As a priest, you are supposed to be a man of God, having dedicated your life to the divine. But you drive a luxury car, you live in a beautiful house somewhere in the suburbs, and talk about the virtue of poverty, saying it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. And you preach temperance while living in excess, and when confronted with your own contradictions, you just say, I'm just doing God's work. All these are examples of people who have not learned to think dialectically. They're not necessarily doing it consciously, all of this. They follow rules, they submit to rules and situations without even examining the contradictions. They don't question whether what they're doing aligns with the values, and they never look for the deeper truth. They live completely mechanically and unconsciously. Of course, there are people that do it deliberately, but there are people that do it totally unconsciously. Dialectics is the tool that allows us to see beyond the surface of things, to recognize our internal contradictions, and to seek the synthesis that will take us one step further. And it's not just about questioning, but a continuous process of searching for the truth, for your truth. And instead of accepting things as they are, we begin to ask, why am I doing this? What are the consequences? What does this action of mine serve? Is this what I really want to do? Or am I just obeying, submitting, or just being comfortable? Dialectical thinking, it's the only way out of unconsciousness. Practical examples of dialectical thinking in daily life. At work, what's the problem? You work for a company that sells poor quality products at very high prices, cheating and deceiving people. instead of seeing it as a dead end and just saying I'm doing my job, you need to ask yourself, is there a way for me to stay here and remain true to my values? If the answer is yes, then how can I shift my position? You look for another job or propose some changes within the company. If you cannot do that, then you use part of your salary to support something else on the side, or you use some of your free time to do something useful. But you are clear about your position and you are conscious about it. In relationships, say that you are in a relationship where you are constantly fighting. You apply dialectical thinking and ask, what does the other person really mean? Are they right about something? What were the causes that created this situation we are experiencing at the moment in our relationship, while before things were different? So instead of reacting emotionally, you examine the depth of the situation and try to find if you can reconcile with the other person, or do what Alexander the Great did instead of perpetuating the problem. What can't be solved needs to be cut. Regarding information, you read an article or hear a news report, but you feel that something isn't right. Something seems strange and suspicious. You don't swallow the information whole or react with your emotions because it's something scary or whatever. You look for who published it, who might have an interest behind this publication, and what the opposing view is. And you seek out sources and compare them before forming an opinion and taking a stance. There are even apps now that give you conflicting articles on the same news story, so you can compare the information. I don't remember what this app is called. I think there are a few apps like this. I recently came across it. In daily consumption, you're thinking about buying a new phone because the new model came out, but your old phone works perfectly fine. And you need to ask yourself, is this real? Is this a real need, or is it a desire that has been subconsciously implanted in my mind through advertising or through the social media platforms? What is the contradiction here? Real needs versus manufactured desires. You realize this, and then you don't act impulsively. In social situations, many people complain about injustice around them, but they do nothing to change it. They always say, that's just how things are. Instead of remaining inactive, again you apply dialectical thinking to yourself and you ask, what are the real causes of this situation? The unconsciousness, the mechanical life of people, the ambiguity, the manipulation of people's consciousness. And what can I do, even on a small level, to contribute to change? For example, I can open a YouTube channel, a Facebook profile, and a TikTok account and tell you what I'm telling you, my friends. This is what suits me. You can find your own way. But everyone needs to do something. In philosophy itself, you feel that you don't have a clear worldview and you just follow what you were taught. And you need to ask yourself, what are my basic principles? What are my ideologies and beliefs? Are all of these things the result of critical thinking, or were they imposed on me? And through dialogue with your own self, through internal questioning and searching, you start forming your own perception of the world, and you filter all the information out. Dialectics as a daily practice. We need to learn how to ask why, instead of accepting things as given. Instead of disagreeing impulsively, we always need to ask ourselves, what does the other person really want to say? And most importantly, you don't go and label them to categorize and scapegoat people just to assure yourself when they are about to say something that takes you out of your control zone, comfort zone. If we all saw the contradictions in our lives and try to overcome them, think about it. What would the world be like? If we looked for the bigger picture and not the superficial, all the superficial stuff, what would the world be like? So maybe dialectics, it is not a boring theoretical subject for boring philosophy universities, but the way to live life more consciously and freely. That's how philosophy used to be. I will finish this video with something else that Antisthenes said. When he was asked what good he got from philosophy, he said, the ability to talk to myself. So the real question is not whether the wooden stake is real. The question is, do we dare to test our strength again? Because inside every labyrinth there is a Minotaur, but there is also a thread. And the thread is this question, why? Will you follow this thread back to yourself? This is Dialectics. Thank you. Bye.